Hey, it's 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, and that means it's time for Catch Up with Mayo. And this is at least a once a week, if not more, routine that I do. And eventually I'll have to change the time, as I keep saying. Unfortunately, I like this time, I like this day, but it's going to change eventually. I'll let you know how that happens. Although, who knows? Maybe when I have my new situations, I still am able to do it this time and keep the time. So we will see because nothing's in stone there either. Nothing's firm there. Scarred God, what's going on? I see Scarred God, and I see Henry, and I see Astro Zombie, and those are the first to join today. So, yeah, well, what's going on? I've been doing a lot of these live streams lately. I've been doing the Mayo Lounge. Mayo Lounge is a little different, when I have other people up with me as guests. At the Mayo Lounge, it's more of an anything goes kind of thing, and it's not so much a situation where I'm here to have Q&A necessarily. This is everybody's opportunity, and I know there are not a lot of people here yet. It'll take a little bit of time. Hi, Elvin. But the whole thing is that I noticed that a lot of times when I'm finished with these videos, these Q&As, there are people who missed the discussion that start commenting in the comments. I read the comments, but I feel like, hey, this is a live Q&A thing here. If you don't ask the question here, save it for next time, and then we can do it next time. Because I don't really answer too many of the questions in the comments section after the fact. So, hello, Penny Lane. You're in my ears, in my eyes. And I heard that song Penny Lane today. I was at the record store, and the whole first side of Magical Mystery Tour was played, followed by the second side, which has Penny Lane on it. Yes, indeed, Lila. I got a Dr. Pepper shirt on today. And hello to all. RD, Sena, Gourds. What's on everyone's mind today? Um, if I did one of these once a week or every 2 weeks only, it would be a lot better, I'm sure. A lot more time for questions, come up with things. What's going on, Tony D? Marcus Thompson. Blue Jay Way is incredible. Well, I'll tell you, it's never been one of my favorites. As a matter of fact, it's always been one of my least favorites. However, today, when listening to the entire album, I did enjoy it. And for the record, I like the stereo version better of Blue Jay Way. I like it much better than the mono version. Jeff Jefferson, hello there. Can't wait for a now and then, but they haven't got a lot to work with. I know. Let's see if they can make a good song out of it. Magical Mystery Tour has always been one of my favorite Beatle albums. I think I enjoy listening to it more than Sergeant Pepper, actually. So, hello to George, aka George Music for all 4 seasons. I don't have my alien green cup today. I just have a bottle of water. Yeah, White Album isn't bad either. But talking about the Beatles here, I mean, very little is if anything, is bad. I mean, Woodland Goblin. Woodland likes Blue Jay Way. The weirdness and mysticism of the Beatles. Perfectly done. Well, you can't argue with that philosophy. Say Bulldog, one of the greatest Beatle tunes. Well, I don't think it's one of the greatest. I do think it's one of the heaviest and one of the more respectable, street cred, street credit, toughest rockin' ones. Yeah, a lot of people love Hey Bulldog. I mean, I love it too. But yes, I do have the album, The Beatles versus the Four Seasons. Although I do not have the poster. I like to get the poster. The problem with that is that the posters were definitely counterfeited as well. So you got to make sure you have an authentic poster from '64 and not a facsimile thereof. You know, so that's a little bit of a job. Favorite George Beatles song. I did a video a long time ago where I ranked George's Beatles songs, and I don't know what I put at first. My favorite Beatles song might be "Don't Bother Me." Actually, George's songs, George's Beatles songs. Although his best is probably "Here Comes the Sun" and "While My Guitar Gently Weeps" and "Something" are probably his best. Since you asked favorite, I'll say "Don't Bother Me." That's the at least the way I feel right now. Oh, I like Dear Prudence way more than Back in the USSR. Way more. I've never really been wild. Well, I can't say I've never been wild about Back in the USSR. I really liked Back in the USSR. Back in the days when I first discovered it. And when I first discovered it, I hadn't heard the White Album yet. I discovered Back in the USSR on the album Beatles Rock and Roll Music, the compilation from 1976. There was where I first heard Back in the USSR and Birthday and songs like that I hadn't heard. The White Album I shortly thereafter started listening to the White Album, but in '76 I hadn't heard the White Album yet. And it's weird when you think about it. It wasn't even 10 years old yet in '76. The White Album, it was like 8 years old or something. Thanks very much, James. I appreciate that. Hi, Darren. Should I sing the Monkeys today? I sang the Monkeys the other day for you, right? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really in a mood to do the Monkeys today or singing in general. Woodland says that George was very versatile in his songs with the Beatles. He did a lot. He did a lot of different flavors in there for sure. What do I think of a release of a 2023 EP with a new song, including outtakes from Magical Mystery Tour? I'll take it any way I can get it instead of remixing the Red and Blue albums. You know, the thing about the Red and the Blue albums is everybody is getting. I'm not saying you are, but you're reminding me that a lot of people are getting like uptight about the fact that it's the 50th anniversary of the Red and the Blue albums, and they're like, "Don't put them out. I want to get Rubber Soul instead, or I want to get Magical Mystery Tour instead, or I want to get the Yellow Submarine EP or whatever." The thing is, we can have our cake and eat it too. It can be both. Nobody says it has to be just one or the other. I'm perfectly okay if it turns out to be the Red and the Blue albums, because the Red and the Blue albums, are going to have songs on them that were not yet given the treatment, the Giles Martin treatment. Songs from Rubber Soul, songs from Help, and earlier songs too. Well, I've said this, Henry, many, many times. Just today, it happened again. I saw a Facebook post, and it's, every time you could just see a simple picture of John. John, there was a picture I saw on social media today of John and May Pang together, and John was smiling in the picture. So they say that people right away, us, John was happiest with May. He never smiled in pictures with Yoko, very rarely. I'm like, what pictures were you looking at? I mean, and that whole thing starts not just bashing John, but Yoko as well. And it's tiring. Kim, I feel bad. You're always at work every time. All you do is work. I feel bad. Hope you retire sometime. But thanks for checking in. Appreciate it. Well, that's a good point. Henry wasn't alive to miss those days. Yeah, and Henry said he missed the days when John was the most iconic and well-known Beatle. Yeah, you weren't alive in those days. You're too young for that. It's been a long, long, long time since those days, as George Harrison say. Yeah, and I got to tell you too, Penny Lane. I so far I do not like the mixes that or the mix whatever the mix was. I think on the one album, I don't like what they did with it. Yeah, okay. Well, you're looking at the glass as half empty instead of half full. What about songs that are on the Red and the Blue albums that were not mixed remixed at all yet? You know, look at those. Look at it that way. Will Hard Day's Night and Help get a release to theaters? Well, James, I already was fortunate this year. If you see one of my videos several videos ago, they actually a small theater here that I know, local theater or independent. That's the word I'm looking for. Independent, not local. Independent theater uh, put a Hard Day's Night in the theater, and I got to see it again. It was great. It was. I've never enjoyed a Hard Day's Night as much as I did recently seeing it in that theater. Um, Being that it's going to be the 60th anniversary, Fathom Events or whoever it is, the big shots should put out a Hard Day's Night. I would love to see Help. I would love to see a double feature, Hard Day's Night and Help together. I don't think that's going to happen. Um, you know, the scene in, or you say in Let It Be, you get me mixed up here, where Paul is telling the film crew that the lights, the gantries, the cameras, they could be all. There's your set right there. Is not in the new Get Back. I think it is. Where did I see that from? Well, for one thing, in Let It Be, the 1970 movie Let It Be, that's not in Let It Be either. I know that comment comes from I think the anthology. I think the anthology, and I forget if it's in the Get Back film. You say it's not, but it's not from Let It Be. Are there any cover Beatles songs that I think are better, or at least equal to the original Beatles songs? None of them are better. None of them. Um, Equal to the Beatles songs? I don't even know if they're equal. There are songs I like. I like Aerosmith's "Come Together." April Wine did an interesting version of "Tell Me Why." Chrissy Hind does an interesting version of "Not a Second Time." I like the version of "With a Little Help from My Friends" by Joe Cocker, but I don't think anybody's ever bettered it. The originals. Maybe you got to meet May Pang in June. How about me? I actually met May Pang in 1981, and as I recall it, I was very young then, and I was only a teenager in 1981, and I was at a Beatle Fest in New York City at a hotel. And as I recall it, I had a bootleg album with me of John Lennon, and I spotted May Pang just hanging out in the crowds. She wasn't a guest, I don't believe. And I said, hey, hi, can I have your autograph? She said, thanks, thank you. What's your name? I told her, Joe. Joe, okay, here you go. And she was very nice. And I got her to sign the back of that album. And I never really saw her again. Well, I mean, I went to in recent year times, I saw her at a convention. I think it was a Chiller convention, Chiller Theater convention in New Jersey, and she seemed a little more standoffish to me at the time. She was just selling something, but look, I would like to meet her, again, but I don't really recall seeing her other than those couple of times. Well, that's interesting. Uh, Lennon versus McCartney debate. Again, one of those posted on Twitter. The response was 50-50, maybe even a little more John. Well, it's funny because I'm glad to hear that that still can happen because, it doesn't happen as much anymore in my experience, and I understand it. My mouth's going very dry today. I understand it. Like I said, a lot of people have Paul as a reference for over 40, John's gone over 40 years, and Paul has had 40 years to be here and put himself out there more. Unfortunately, when John was painted as iconic, people were saying Paul was a lame balladeer. I think that reputation's always going to stick. I think it still sticks, and I think it's even though it's a general thing, and Paul could write plenty of rock songs, and Paul obviously was a great rock and roller, still is, and Paul always was able to rock out with the best of them. Paul's always going to have a reputation for silly, lame, ballady love songs. That's his persona. Soft. He's soft. John's hard. That's the way it is. And but people sometimes say, "Well, that means that does that mean that John could never be on the soft side?" No. Does it mean Paul could never be on the rock side? Hardly. Absolutely, he could. But I don't know why people have a discomfort with that general feeling, because it is true. I mean, it's true all around. Um, was John Sergeant Pepper outfit green or yellow? I've always considered it like a limey green or limey. Sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant lime as in lime as in lime like. You know, a lime kind of thing. But sometimes it looks more yellow. It's funny. Yeah, well, John's legend looms large because, yes, because he was murdered, and a lot of people blame John for that sometimes, and stuff. And McCartney even once got fed up and called him. He has the image of like Martin Luther or Lennon, and John didn't ask to get murdered, so tragic. Still, every day, at least once a day. At some point, I think, wow, John's not here anymore. I wonder what would happen if he was here. At least once, you know. That snake, that vermin that killed him. He ruined it for a lot of people. Changed everybody's lives because of that. What do I think about solo Beatles re-recording old Beatles songs? I don't like it. I don't like it at all, really. I don't like it much at all. No, I mean when Paul did the "Give My Regards to Broad Street," I didn't mind it then. It's just a few songs that he did for the movie Broad Street that I didn't mind. But generally speaking, not really a fan of that. Do I think Magic Alex was useless or was he important to the Beatles? I think he was mostly useless. No need for the most part. Mr. Blood Vessel, I remember hearing that one day somebody brought that noise to my record store that I go to, and it was Leibach. He played Let It Be. It was horrifically bad. Horrifically bad. But one of the worst Beatles songs that covers to me, and I know a lot of you will tell me, say if you agree or disagree, and that's okay if you disagree. We got somebody out there who thinks that I never accept disagreements. Anyway, but anyway, Gotta Get You Into My Life by Earth, Wind and Fire. Horrible, horrible. Can't stand it. I know a lot of people are big fans of that version, but was Beatle Fest in 1981 morbid? I know what you mean because John had died in 1980. I don't remember it that way at all. I don't remember it that way at all. It's a long time, 1981, a long time ago. I went to I think two Beatle Fests in 1981. One of them I think was in New Jersey in March, was my first, And Mark Lapidus, who runs the Beatle Fest, didn't really know if they should do a fest anymore after John died, and the fans said they need it more than ever now. And it was, if anything, it was more of a it was great to have everybody come together and share in their love for John. So it wasn't morbid, as I recollect it. Um, I should do a top 10 solo Beatles songs, a top 10 of any solo Beatles songs from any of the four. I don't know if I've ever done that. If I can remember, that's not a bad idea if I haven't done it already. And these days, like a lot of people out there that you might see, I won't name names, but they're, but no, I don't blame anybody. But, you're trying to get content out there. And, sometimes you got to come up with these ideas, even if it means, records, top five records I'm most likely to have under my pillow at night, whatever it is, you got to come up with something. Was there anybody who passed away that I regret never getting to meet? Oh, sure, lots of people. Let's see how many I can remember. First and foremost being John Lennon, of course. Um, well, people from the old horror films, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, they died a long time. And anybody like that, Lon Chaney Jr. from the who played the Wolfman, yeah, those kind of people, and I'm sure there are other people as well. Um, but I'm very proud for myself that I did manage to meet and say hello and thank a lot of people, celebrities in movies, television, and music who I admired. I was able to either say hello, shake hands, get a photo with them, or an autograph, or both. I'm so glad I was able to do that for so many people I admire. Sorry if I miss comments. I'll try to do what I can do here. You can put them back if I miss them. Uh, well, that's true. That's true. I always pride myself on giving my honest opinion. And anybody who's been hanging around here a long time, would know this. It's funny because there was just a guy, this guy Martin, who used to come here a lot, who followed me for years, and I put up with a lot of his silliness for years. And he went over the line, telling me, "Well, you have a vested interest, or whatever term he used. You have to not upset the apple cart with the Beatles and their estates. That's why you always say good things." He obviously, for a guy that watches me a lot, he obviously didn't know that, because any of you could know that. I'll tell you when something stinks. I'll tell you, I'll criticize Paul, and I'll get a lot of backlash from Paul people. Then other times I'll praise Paul, and I'll hear people say, "What? Do you love the Beatles so much that you're incapable of giving a negative opinion?" You can't. You can't win no matter which way you go. But that's very offensive to me when people believe that nonsense, because anybody who watches me knows I'll tell it like it is, and I don't care whether it's the George Harrison estate, the Lennon estate, McCartney estate, Paul, Ringo themselves. I like what I like, and I don't like what I don't like, and I'll say it. And I think people who do that, I think they should respect you more. I know Julian, not Julian. I'm sorry, sorry, Julian. Sean Lennon definitely respected that, as some of you know. Sean Lennon contacted me personally to tell me he liked the review that I did for the "Give Me Some Truth" album, and in that "Give Me Some Truth" review, I said there were some things about that release I did not like, even though generally I did love it. I said that I didn't like to say on the song "Steel and Glass" that the horns that I liked, the brass, were taken off the track, and I didn't like that. And I said that, and Sean told me he really appreciated that I was honest about it. So this thing about you got to like kiss butt and all this, I don't do that. I don't think they want you to do that. I mean, I know for me personally, I believe people more and respect their opinion more when they don't always either hate something all the time, they hate every single thing, or when they love every single thing. I don't. I personally don't believe that that's really possible. I believe if you're honest, there's got to be some things that aren't as good. You know, except for the Beatles themselves, their music is really an exception. As I'm sitting here, I got a gnat flying around here. Summertime. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's buzzing by me. Sorry if you see him. Chartreuse. John Pepper's costume, Sergeant Pepper's costume was chartreuse. There you go. That settles that. Um, what is your vested interest anyway? I don't have one. I don't think the person used the term vested interest. I forget what he said, but he did say you don't want to upset the apple cart. He said you don't want to. I forget what he called it. Didn't say vested interest, but he said you don't want to upset the apple cart. You know. Of all the movies I own, which one looked the best and has the best packaging and extras and stuff? Well, Planet of the Apes comes to mind. There was a Planet of the Apes released around 2009, I think, 8 or 9, and it had all the old movies, and and it had the new movie at the time, the one with the Tim Burton abomination, and it came in an ape's head. I have it right in front of me. It's behind the computer screen. I'm not going to take it down, but yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind. There's probably other better ones. I guess this is a compliment. I've been watching 9+ years, and you've never changed from then, in my opinion. Thank you. I don't. I've never seen House of the Wolf Man all the way through, but I know what it is. I know when they kind of like, they try to do a tribute. Yeah, I know what House of the Wolf Man is. If I see that in that, I'm gonna try to get it. He says the horns dated the song too much. Glad he took the horns off Steel and Glass. Well, no, I don't agree with that. And not for nothing, I love the horns in Steel and Glass. But even if I didn't, that's the kind of case where I say you don't touch something like that. I don't believe you touch. I don't believe you change that. There's a lot of horns on solo Beatles albums and John Lennon albums. A lot of brass horns and things on the rock and roll album. You know. I think John just like most of the time liked to just get in there and do plain old rock and roll. I don't think he was really big on production most of the time. He's sitting there forever trying to produce, get like something done. Like it took a lot of work. I think he just liked straight rock and roll, to tell you the truth. But John was very critical of his own work. And I remember he said his quote was in the Rolling Stone interview in 1970. He said that I can knock the Beatles, but don't let Mick Jagger knock them. He could, he can like be critical, but John criticized too much, and I really think he was on the way to being more positive and a better outlook. I think had he lived, into his 40s and 50s and beyond, I really think that he would have been a lot more open. Don't forget, Paul, George, and Ringo were not very open about the Beatles too till they got older. So um, I must say you are a man of integrity with a New York accent. What accent? I have no accent. um, do I like an American Werewolf in London? No, I don't like that movie. I like the effects. I think for 1981, some of those werewolf transformation effects were very good. However, I just didn't like the stupidity, the silliness. Him, the main character getting to meet his corpse friend who kept rotting and deteriorating more and more. Silliness like that. I just don't love that stuff. Yeah, hi James. I know you said you saw that my post. Oh, I don't. Oh, maybe it's a different thing you're talking about now. I'm sorry. Have I ever bid for anything in an auction? Sure, I bid for a number of things. These days, I don't bid so much anymore. I used to bid more in the early 2000s when eBay was newer. These days, if there's anything I want, I just go in there and I click on, buy it now, and I just buy it now. I don't get into all that bidding. If there's something I want to buy it now. I don't get into all that bidding nonsense. So you're from Jersey, and born in Brooklyn. Speak similar. Okay. Well, I don't think I got an accent there, huh? I'm kidding. Nobody thinks they have an accent. They think everybody else has the accent. Don't worry. Nothing is real. I know what I'm doing. Thank you very much for your advice. John, I don't know. John changed his mind. Again, I don't know why people have such a problem with people who change their minds. I change my mind all the time, right? Change my mind about my movie channel names. I change my mind about whether I want this channel here to be all Beatles and music related, or do I want to put movies on them? Yes, no, yes, no. I mean, he changed his mind. I don't know. What are you gonna do? I don't know, but I don't trust people. People who say they never change their mind or they just adapt one philosophy. If you're a human being with thoughts, feelings, emotions, if you tend to grow or learn, or you would change your views on things and opinions. I think. Yeah, it's a famous quote here. Mark Lapidus, that's the guy who runs the Beatle Fest, or Fest for Beatles fans now. Sure. The situation was that John was in New York City hanging out with Harry Nielsen at the March of Dimes in 1974, and Mark Lapidus had the idea of doing the Beatle Fest, but for whatever reason, he wanted to get John's permission. He wanted to get his blessing on it. So he found out what hotel room John was staying at. He knocked on the door. He got to meet John, and he told John about his idea for the Beatle Fest, and John said, "I'm all for it. I'm a Beatles fan too." And yeah, so John was a Beatles fan, I mean, like everything, he had his hard moments and everything. And I'm hoping this gnat that I see is only one. It might be time to clean this room a bit. I don't know. You know, which Beatles song do I think is the most psychedelic out of all of them? I don't know. You do the first ones that come to mind. I mean, there's Blue Jay Way, there's Strawberry Fields Forever. Um, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I'll go with. I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with being a contradiction. Nothing wrong at all. People have different moods, different eras, and I have no problem with it. As I said earlier, anybody who insists, like if they had an opinion in 1978 and it's the same exact opinion today, I question them a little bit. I mean, sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. I mean, I didn't like disco in 1977. Now I like disco. Okay, for example. And there's other things too. Certain people that I didn't, I used to like, now I don't like them, or vice versa. I mean, come on, I don't know why everybody looks at that as some kind of a flaw, character flaw or something. John, I don't know. I don't get that. Do I know where in Italy my family is from? Have you ever visited? I've never visited Italy. I don't care about traveling. A lot of times people, oh, you should go to Europe. Oh, no offense to anybody, you should go to England, Liverpool. I'd like to go to Liverpool one day. If I don't, I'm fine with that. But anyway, no, I've never been there. And do I know where my family is from in Italy? No. Have you ever seen an artist in concert for the first time and walked away disappointed? You had The Doors and George Harrison. Well, the first one that comes to mind is the first time I saw Bob Dylan. I saw Bob Dylan in 1989. It was the worst worst show I ever went to. I was so disappointed. I couldn't make out any of the songs he was singing, and and he was very rude and ignorant to the audience. He didn't even bother acknowledging them, and I know that's his cool thing. You know, that's it's the way Dylan is. He tries to be cool like that, but whatever. I didn't think it was so nice. And but then I saw Dylan in 2013, which is a lot of years later, and he was good. I also saw the Stones, the Rolling Stones, the first and only time I saw them, the Steel Wheels tour at Atlantic City, New Jersey, in 1989, and I thought the Rolling Stones were not good. And I've seen the Rolling Stones on TV live, you know, and sometimes they're really good. This time, I don't know, I just didn't like them. Uh, I've seen them other times where they were good. Yeah, John always spoke highly of Help, In My Life, and Across the Universe. He also spoke highly of Hey Jude, you know. He liked Hey Jude, and Here, There, and Everywhere. Well, we don't know that John changed his mind daily, unless you do a daily interview with John, 365 interviews a year, every day, you wouldn't know. But I know what you're saying. But well, you know, yeah, John changed his mind since the Rolling Stone interview. That's for sure. It doesn't matter what order we get the Beatles' music releases. It doesn't. It doesn't. I don't know why. You know. And then when the Rubber Soul comes out, everybody's going to play it once. It's going to sit on the shelf, and nobody's going to talk about it. I always notice that happens, you know, with stuff. It comes out, there's a big fan surge of interest, and then all of a sudden they don't talk about it much after that, you know? Oh, definitely. Most of the psychedelic songs are John's, definitely. But of course, you know, Paul's been trying to rewrite history lately to try to make it sound like he was the true avant-garde, weird, crazy, mystical, artsy, psychedelic one. You know, and that's not again, that's not trying to slag Paul, but it's just saying, look, Paul, let the man have something, man. You know, you're already. Everybody knows, Paul. You're the most talented musician in the group. You're the hardest worker in the group. You know, you saved the Beatles later, and the Beatles wouldn't have continued without your help. We know all this stuff. You know, you wrote a lot of the most popular Beatles songs that still are number one and get radio play. Let John have something. Let him at least have the one that he's the harder edge, that he's the psychedelic guy. Let him have something. Don't try to steal everything. Yes, indeed, James. Yes, indeed. I'm with you. Or you're with me. Yeah, I like the song "It's All Too Much Now," the George song. I used to go. It used to go on my list as the worst Beatles song. When somebody would say, "What's the worst Beatles song?" I would pick that. But I like it now. I still don't think it's one of the Beatles' best songs. But I agree. It's impossible what John would have thought today. A lot of people out there say, uh, think otherwise. I'd have to hear the song first to see if I recognize it. I don't recognize it by the title. Favorite song on Revolver is Tomorrow Never Knows. And yes, I know that Paul did the tape loops. I know. Thought on great classic films being edited for TV for today's in case they get offended generation. Well, that's tricky territory, Lila, and I wish it wasn't tricky territory. I wish we lived in a world where you could give your opinion and not be like shut down for it. But I gotta say that I think it goes too far. Some of it I understand to a point. Some of it I understand, but a lot of it is too going way too far. Way too far. Yeah, Liverpool isn't a great spot for Beatles fans. It's great. I'm sure I'd get a real kick out of it going there. And if I was able to go there, I mean, it costs some money. We have to get some money together, and it's hard these days because of retirement and everything. I would love to make videos from there and share them with you. You know. Well, the thing is, I know I love the song "Early Days" from Paul's album called "New," and I really do. I love the song. I love the lyrics, and I really like Paul's voice in it. The fact I always say the fact that Paul's voice sounds so old and aged in it kind of makes the song stand out because it's a song about an older man singing about his early days and he's looking back. However, now he doesn't specifically say Mark Lewison's name in the song, but he's talking about people who say this and who did this and who did that, but they weren't there, so what do they know? It could be Mark Lewis and others, people like that. But the thing is, I've always took Paul to task for that. Look, Paul, I've heard Paul say things that aren't accurate too. I still maintain that although the Beatles know very much what it feels like to have been Beatles. I mean, the four Beatles are the only ones in the world who can say what it feels like to be a Beatle. But as far as their own history goes, John, Paul, George, and Ringo all, at some point or another, got facts wrong. Years wrong, release orders wrong. I don't agree with that. Sometimes the best historians are non-Beatles. Believe it or not. But that's not to say that the Beatles themselves don't, of course, know firsthand the feelings, the emotions of living it. It's two different things, I think. What about the Stone show that I saw in 1989 was no good. I just didn't like the way Mick sang the songs. You know, I never liked Mick's live style as much as the records. I'm a stickler. A lot of you know this already. When I see a live show, I want it to sound like the records. And I know a lot of people say, well, then what's the point? If you're going to go to a live show and you want it to sound like the record, why not just stay home and listen to the record? And I say, well, because they're live, because they're in front of you, they're actually in the flesh, and you're in the same room with them, breathing the same oxygen, because there's energy in the crowd, and we're all screaming and yelling and getting excited and applauding. Th- Doesn't that have something to do with it? But with the actual performance, I want it to sound like the record. I don't know. If he's walking around going, I don't know. I can't get no satisfaction. I try. I can't get no satisfaction. I can't get no satisfaction. I can't get no satisfaction. That sounds nothing like the freaking record, and I don't like it. But I've seen other times where the Stones are excellent. And I like what they're doing. So it's not that I never liked them. So there you go. There it is. I see that gnat. I want to clap my hands and get it. Yeah, I'm suspecting that nothing is real is really Martin McGrath, but we'll see. I suspect that, but we'll see. This is interesting. Rome Loves Dan says about relating to talking about not caring what order we get stuff released in. Some may not live to see the day that certain things are released. The target audience not getting any younger. You know what's a sad thing though? These days, the target audience, a lot of times it seems the target audience is not us fans who are older. diehards. No, the target audience a lot of times actually seems to be younger people, like the Red and the Blue albums here. They're gearing them towards the younger generations. So a lot of times, that's one of the things that a lot of diehard Beatle collectors for decades, older fans, are getting sick of, is that they seem to only really cater to the young fans. And I get that. I definitely want there to be new generations. You need to have new generations of fans. But let's see. Let's see. Do you have good enough audio equipment to be able to tell the differences in all these remixes? I feel you really need top level audio equipment to be here. You don't need that. I hear that. I've always hear the differences every time there's differences. I don't need. I don't need amazing equipment. Really, I've been listening to these records, these songs for whatever it's been. Not 60 years, but something like that. And I know them by heart. I can always tell. Yeah, Only a Northern Song is very psychedelic as well. Was I surprised when George released When We Was Fab, considering he was reluctant for a while to talk about the past? Yeah, I guess a little bit. I love that George did that. I think it was great. But some of the lyrics in there in that song aren't exactly looking fondly of the Beatles days. Some of them are really cynical lyrics in the song When We Was Fab. Dylan never sings anything like the record, and that's good. Well, what I'm trying to say is, but then again, yeah, good point there. I gotta say, because I love Dylan the way he sings the songs on in the concert for Bangladesh. Now, those are not exactly like the record stuff, like "Hard Rain's Gonna Fall," and "It Takes a Lot to Laugh," "It Takes a Train to Cry." You know. However, I must say that I do enjoy Dylan's performance, for example, at Bangladesh. I think he's the best thing about that show, even over George. Yes, I said it. So I'm just saying this to show you that I can like some of these things. You know, have I ever wondered what music would have been like if the Beatles had never existed? I dread to think about it. We'd still be listening to Frankie Avalon and stuff like that, I guess. I mean, not that I don't love some of that late 50s, early 60s stuff. I do. Paul has taken some credit for all those songs. Yeah. Yes. I'm getting something here, a message here about a new Ringo EP. So let me just see if I got that here. Just want to check this, see if there's a message here. Nope, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. Never mind. Strawberry Fields versus the White Album. That's apples and oranges. One's one song and one's a whole album of 32 songs. One thing I do think if John were here today, he would be speaking out on politics and the climate of the country. He wasn't shy about speaking his mind about social issues. Man, I miss that. Yeah, me too. But I will say this we were talking a lot about how John always changed his mind. So I'm not so sure John's mindset in that area would be the same as it was in the 60s or 70s. I'm not so sure of that. I think he might have changed his mind on political stuff. Sergeant Pepper versus the White Album. I understand definitely understand and the influence and innovation worldwide of the Sergeant Pepper album. Having said that, I prefer the White Album by far. Yeah, I wonder about. But see, the thing is, you say I don't get why Paul can't just be happy with his 26 albums and half the Beatles songs. He has the most music of the four Beatles, and yet he still takes from everyone. I think that it's a little harsh, but I know what you mean. And I think Paul is insecure. I think Paul is for a long time now, the last 15, 20 years, Paul has been very concerned about his how he's going to be remembered and his legacy, and he wants people to know everything that he did, every little thing, and leave no stone unturned. And without any shadow of a doubt, I'm the man. That's what I think he wants. I think everybody else knows that Paul has nothing to worry about with his legacy. His legacy is assured. But the only one who doesn't believe that is Paul. I think Paul is insecure about it. Russ, you're going to have to ask this question another time. I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure I understand the question. You said, is this the Beatles or a solo Beatle? Oh, you mean like, are there any songs? Oh, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. I might steal it for next Four Walls show. No. The one time it happened was when the song Paul had a new album that was coming out in 1982, and it was going to be it turned out to be the Tug of War album, but it didn't come out yet. And I remember one time riding in my car and hearing a song by Squeeze called Black Coffee in Bed. And listen to that vocal. There's a stain on my notebook where your coffee cup was. And I thought it sounded like it could be Paul. I thought maybe this was the new Paul song, Black Coffee in Bed. And turned out to be Squeeze. That's one time. And that's true. I think it's true. Paul feels like he's still chasing John's shadow. And I wish he would realize that, John's been gone 43 years on near just about, and I know he realizes that John's gone. Yeah, he realizes that. But you've really shown how good you are, Paul. People know how good you are. You know. Well, I got to say, now here's a moment where people think I'm always putting Paul down and never putting him up. I think When I'm 64 is a brilliant song. Brilliant. Especially when you think that he started writing it when he was 16. And he's a young guy at 25 years old looking ahead to when he's going to be old. And trust me, 64 doesn't seem so old to me anymore. But, and I think it's a brilliant song about a young man uh, wondering what it's going to be like when he's an old man. I think it's really interesting, and I do love it. So, My only interest in a new Red and Blue album would be stereo remixes or demixes of "Love Me Do," "She Loves You," "Saw Her Standing There," etc. It's going to be interesting. I agree. At first I was like most people. I thought to myself, a Red and Blue album again? Why do we need that? Do we need that? And then I thought, well, wait a minute. If it's going to be really like taking those songs and trying to uh, make them stand out, in that way, and make real good stereo versions out of them, and maybe it'll be good. Let's hear it. If it's not, if it's not good, I'll say it. What song would I drop from Sergeant Pepper if Strawberry Field Single had been included? Well, first for the record, I got to be difficult. Let me say I don't. I'm not a person who plays that game usually. I believe Sergeant Pepper was a phenomenon, a classic album. For a long time, it's considered the number one rock album of all time. It changed the world. It's perfect as it is. But if we want to drop one and put Strawberry Fields on it, that's a tough one. My heart wants to tell me "Within You, Without You," only because to me it's probably one of my least favorite songs on it. I do like it. "Within You, Without You" is a fine song by George. Just one of my least favorites. But these days, I think, well, you got to have George on the album. You don't want to take George's song off. So I'm thinking maybe "Good Morning, Good Morning." Sorry, John. I don't know. The 60 is when I'm 64 belong on Sergeant Pepper though. Well, I don't know how you mean it. After over you know well close to 60 years, it seems to me that it's considered such a part of Sergeant Pepper. It's hard to imagine it without it. But I think I know what you mean. Like the style, maybe the style is different. I think it's fine on Pepper, but I know what you mean when you say it. Maybe the style is too different. We do not need a red and blue. Sorry, Joe. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Russ, because the only thing we need is food, shelter, oxygen, water. But I get what you mean. I'm trying to be sarcastic. Um, do we need it? No, but as I said, if it's going to have the new song on it, so far we haven't had a compilation album or an album that has Real Love and Free as a Bird on it. If it's going to have Free as a Bird, Real Love, and if it's going to have um, the new song Now and Then on there, I don't know what to say, you know? No, I don't agree. I don't agree. Woodland, I'm sorry. Paul was not that psychedelic. Yeah, okay. He did Carnival of Light and he had the tape loops for Tomorrow Never Knows or whatever. But I don't know why you can't just say John was way more psychedelic and John was always more risque. John was always more weird and odd from the days back in school when he wrote really weird. He drew really weird pictures and he made the books. Pictures that wound up being part of the books of in his own right and expanded in the works. John was always artsy and different like that. I give him that. David says there are already some stunning AI stereo mixes of "She Loves You," "I'll Get You," "Love Me Do," and "P.S. I Love You" available on bootlegs. Well, that's silly because, of course, who cares? The idea is to have them officially in the canon. Part of the official catalog sanctioned by the Beatles and Apple. That's what you want. Sure, they're out there in those versions, but you want them to be the real McCoy. That's crazy. Like, should we never get the Shea Stadium concert because you can get it on a bootleg? Stuff like that. I don't agree with that. Russ continues. I think the red and the blue are ultra important for second waivers of the 70s. Little Revolver. Oh, and also we get the remixes already. Sorry, falls off the soapbox. Well, you don't know. First of all, we don't know if the versions of Penny Lane, say, or Strawberry Fields are going to be the same ones we already have, just transported over. Or they're going to be new mixes. We don't know. And again, let's wait to hear it. And I'm gonna, I'm gonna stick with that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I just wish more people would say, well, let's see what it is first you know, and then comment. I'll be the first one to say this was a waste of time. This was unnecessary, or if I like it, think they did a good job with it, I'll say it. Am I the only non-Beatles fan here? It's not hating. I still enjoy the show. Yeah, I know. I appreciate that, Scarred God. I like that. It's amazing to me that some people could come up and watch my channel a lot who aren't necessarily Beatles fans. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I love when I see your name there. You were the first guy here. You were the first guy to show up today. Um, you're not the only one. There's someone else. Astro Zombie. Astro Zombie's not a Beatles fan yet. He loves my channel, and that says something to me. I appreciate that. You know. Yeah, that's a good point. Henry says Paul also took credit for being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, to which someone says the sound is gone here. I don't know if it is. Henry, you're beating a dead horse. How many times are you going to say it? Now, the reason Woodland's saying that is because he's always supporting Paul, doesn't like anything against Paul. Paul, uh, you know, occasionally can get criticized. But Henry does have a habit of saying things over and over again, though. I will say that. I've never read John's books, but I know they are tripe. No, you have to read it first and then call them tripe if you think they're tripe. Um, but anyway, that has nothing to do with it. Even if they're tripe, even if they are tripe, the bottom line is Paul was not the real artistic and weird and oddball and bizarre one. John was with his tripe books. You know, tripe or not. And I still think that Nothing Is Real is Martin McGrath, who I recently had to ban from here. So we'll see how that goes for a while. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but we'll see how it goes. I don't know why people have to take sides after all this time. Well, Mark, I know what you mean. I don't know either. But it's always going to be that way. And the reason is because John and Paul are so different. A lot of people make big arguments that John and Paul are not different at all. They're actually very similar. They had a lot of similarities, John and Paul. I disagree. I think they're very different. I mean, not say they didn't have some similarities, like both losing their moms early on or something like that, but they're very different kinds of men. Definitely, and I think that's why. Well, that's bizarre. Astro Zombie says I can appreciate the Beatles' talents, but I just don't find myself listening to them. It's bizarre in a way, but so each calzone. Well, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Do Olivia and Yoko get a say before all these remastered re-releases, or they just say yes anyway? I don't know. You'd have to ask them. I mean, I know they get a say. I know they get a say. Whether or not they say yes anyway, I don't. I don't know about that. This is an interesting take. I would take off "She's Leaving Home" from Sergeant Pepper. It neither fits with the concept of a park concert or Martin's concept of sound creating images. Just a pretty good lyric, and that's it. It's a dirge. It may be a dirge, but it is a very powerful, emotional song, and it's the only Beatles song that comes close to making me cry. Honestly, if you want, I mean, people say what Beatles song makes you cry. That's my answer. Um, but I guess I could know what you mean by it not really fitting on there as well. But I'm stretching that. Yeah, I think you're right. Henry says, I bet Paul wouldn't casually say this stuff if John was still alive today. Well, exactly. That's why he didn't say a lot of it when John was alive. Obviously, a lot of these claiming parts of songs and stuff, he didn't see. Some of it he did, but most of it he didn't. That's right. Apple always has their profit as their first motive in their timing of everything. A lot of people call it cash grab as if that's a bad thing. Uh, Apple, EMI, Parlophone, Apple, everybody's been in the business of making money first motive from day one. Day one. They wouldn't have put the Beatles out if they didn't think they could make money off their singles. They wouldn't put out "Love Me Do" and stuff if they didn't think they could make a little "Please Please Me." Come on, guys. You know. So now I'm sure there's lots of questions I missed and everything. Mason's here. Hello, Mason. For comments, questions. Okay. Marcus says, I remember that quote from George after John died, where he said that it was now his responsibility to call Paul on his BS. Everyone knew that Paul had the biggest ego and over inserts himself. Well, but at the same time, I'll defend Paul. Listen up, folks. I'm defending Paul. And I will say at times, even though he does tend to do that, he also sometimes is humble. He plays. He can be humble, and he can give other people the credit too. I've seen him do that too. Not always, doesn't go just one way or the other. Yeah, a lot of people. A lot of people don't like Mr. Moonlight. They want to have Leave My Kitten Alone on Beatles for Sale. There you go. Mark never praised me. Oh, Mark, I have to ban you. I have to block you. You know. Well, that's the thing. People say to me, "Why is Paul not your favorite Beatle, and why is John?" And I say, "Because with John, for better or worse, and a lot of times it was worse, was always the real deal, and put himself in harm's way. Sometimes said things he shouldn't say, acted the way he shouldn't act. Often regretted things he did or said. A real human being. Paul is trying to please all the time and trying to be nice, and doesn't want to step on toes and things like that. Now, having said that, in a way, this is where I try to be fair. See things as shades of gray, not all black or white. I'll weigh it. I will say that uh, Paul. Like I said, it's just not all the time that he does it. Sometimes he will be honest, Paul. Sometimes not. The truth of the matter is, I was reading comments and I had a senior moment. I forgot what I was going to say in mid sentence. Sound like anybody you know lately out there? You know? But yeah, it just happened. I don't know what I was going to say. If I remember, I'll say it again. I was trying to give Paul credit where it's due, but I'm saying, oh, I know what I was going to say. I remembered now. Sorry, I got to end this chat soon. It's an hour and 15 minutes. The thing about Paul is that I admire that too. You know, if you can be a person that kind of tries to not show a bad side, if you're a person who can try to be thumbs up a lot and you can look at the positive side, even if it's not always the way you're feeling, but you're trying to act that way or present that image, sometimes that can be admirable too. I can't do that. If I'm miserable, I act miserable. I tell you I'm miserable. If I'm happy, I dance around and tell you how great I feel. You know, I don't understand. Sometimes I wish I could be more like Paul and always just see the glass always is full all the time and always do the thumbs up thing, and everything. But, that in itself is kind of a gift to be able to do that. Will you buy the new release on vinyl, CD, or both? Well, David, let's first see what it's offered. Let's see what comes out and when. Let's see what comes out and when it comes out. And We'll see. Probably both, but you never know. Have I done a stream every day since this Monday? I might have. Putting in a lot of work this time is right. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy doing this. I love making contact with the people who watch, you know? And I'm going to have to get off now because I don't like it going too much over an hour 15 minutes when I do these. So, anyway, thank you everybody for being here. Um, I should be back next Saturday, hopefully, doing this again. Usually around 4 p.m. Eastern, give or take an hour or half hour each way, or something like that. And if you have any questions here that I haven't answered, save them for next time. Write them down. But also, please know that I don't really answer a lot of questions in the comments to these afterwards. The idea, is to do them now. I was almost going to disable the comments after I put this up as a video. I'm thinking of disabling comments. I don't mind people making feedback comments, like what they think of things. But if you're going to ask me a question in the comments, I usually won't answer them because I figure it's supposed to be done here and now. And you can do them next time. So, thank everybody. Have a great week ahead, everybody. Huh? And we'll talk soon.